But today I am gonna tell him he has 2 days now.
Good morning, may I have your attention and call to order the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority Committee meetings. We'll be starting with the Finance Committee. Mike will be chairing today.
Thanks, Glenn. We'll call the Finance Committee of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority to order. Would you please call the roll, Sylvette?
John Hayes, Paul Anthony,
I'm here.
Ann Baum, Robert Brooks.
Here.
Ricky Gower,
Here.
Kevin Law,
Here.
Mike Stershik.
Here.
We have a quorum,
Is there any public comment?
not at this time.
Okay. You all should have seen a copy of the meeting minutes for the April 24th meeting. Are there any corrections or comments? Hearing none.
I'll make a motion.
Paul made the motion. Is there a second? Ricky, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Financial statements. I guess we'll turn that over to Todd.
All right, good morning.
You can see him sneak in, so I guess.
Oh, okay. Throw me off, though. You're usually on this side, so I'm kind of throwing things off. Paul moved back, so I don't know what's going on here.
We're trying to confuse you.
There you go. And for everybody's benefit, our auditor, Scott Nickerson, is sitting there. I know he's getting a strange look, so he's standing in for John to make sure we got some good financials up here, so.
Here to critique you.
There you go. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, we walk through our, we start off with our traffic. Interestingly enough, April was our 4th best on record. Every other month this year has been our 2nd best, but April was our 4th best. Still a pretty good month as far as traffic is concerned. Kind of comparing us to all airports, you can kind of see our seats are up versus all airports and also our throughput. So again, we always use the seats that we get there. Comparing us to our peers, we're kind of in that same benchmark where we've been pretty much throughout most of this year, comparing ourselves to last year at the same time, kind of in the middle of the pack there. Looking at our month of April, we talked about this a little bit last month. Not as robust as we've seen so far in the other month, a lot because of what you see down there is a lot of the demo expenses that we had with the government building showed up in April. We were using our CARES funding for that, but we got all of our CARES money in February. So, but we still ended up positive, which is a good thing. And we still came up a little bit ahead of budget there. But that's probably the biggest thing that we see there. The other thing that's off is a little bit is our revenue versus what we had budgeted. Some of that is our accruals that we're putting in. We had some of our adjustments for our rent-a-cars that we usually wait till end of the year. We're trying to make these adjustments earlier so you see things in real time and not at the end of the year. We also have some of our airline accruals in there as well. So again, not as much adjustments at the end of the year. You remember we had that huge adjustment last year for the GASB that we made throughout the year. So hopefully there'll be less adjustments at year end because we're making these adjustments in real time. Kind of saying where we are year to date there, without CARES, still ahead of budget pretty nicely there. Still collected a little bit more CARES than we anticipated at this point. Next month, May is when we anticipated collecting the other 415. So we'll be on track for budget as far as CARES is concerned starting next month. And Frank's favorite chart, we just call it the Frank chart. Really 15 consecutive months where each month has been positive in net income, excluding CARES income and miscellaneous income. Actually I think we're at 28, except 1 month out of the last 28. And that was that December adjustments that we made in 2020.
So another reason to spread out the
spread it out to keep
the
Frank streak going.
How much did you pay for that, Frank?
There you go. The streak is good there. Yes. All right. Kind of seeing where the profits are. CARES obviously at the top of that goes away next year, and then we'll be dealing with parking. But you can kind of see down at the bottom there, airfield and terminal. We're really dealing with a lot of our support that we do to kind of keep our charges there low. And you can see kind of what's going on with that subsidy there and why those numbers are not as robust as we would.
Sorry, I don't know, but are we on a fiscal year or a calendar year?
Our fiscal year is a calendar year,
Okay.
so our April is 4 months, so we're 1/3 of the year done. Great question. I love when we get a great question. Nobody ever asked me any questions, except for Paul.
I'm eating.
Okay. You kind of see our budget variances there. I mentioned the CARES there. The big one there is the employee benefits, not as many full-time employees as we had budgeted. That's one of the big ones. Net interest, we'll talk about that with one of the other adjustments later. And then you see the contract services is really the demolition that we didn't have it timed in this early. And that's part of the reason that the numbers for April weren't as robust as we've seen for some of the others. Kind of saying we are year to date versus budget. You can kind of see it on a non-personnel why it's up so much versus last year because of the demolition that's in there for this year. And then breaking down our year-to-date average employee versus what we had budgeted, you can kind of see what I was talking about on the full-time employees. We have a variance of about 12, but the FTEs is only off about 6 there. So everybody's got a chart. This is Justin's favorite chart, breaking it down by department, how much is going to be ebbs and flows of our departments. And then breaking down our cash flow, this is breaking it out for the last 6. Some of the adjustments are in yellow there. We moved back the lease adjustments just based on the timing. Took a little bit more PFCs, that's what's in there at this point. Usually the biggest adjustments are in our capital and the timing of those, and those are reflected here. And then that property line is just a number that we've been holding for a property that we're maybe or may not buy at some point, but we have it there just in case. And then the AIP is one of the numbers we changed. Even though we've taken the money out, we're trying to make these adjustments quarterly. So what we're doing to just kind of make the cash flow with the restriction. So what happens is we pay for something that's restricted. We pay for it out of unrestricted money, and then we reimburse ourselves from a restricted account. We're doing that quarterly. So what will happen is each quarter you'll see the money that we pay for restricted money to just reimburse ourselves in the unrestricted account. So just to make it easier to follow, that's why that number is adjusted there. We were kind of reducing number, even though it was still sitting in the restricted account, so it's easier to follow. But again, it's just as we pay for something that's restricted, we reduce that balance. Kind of see there, we're pretty good as far as cash on hand for the next 12 months. We're at a pretty good level above our peer number. We still haven't got the 2024 number, but we will reflect that when it happens. Kind of see our assumptions we've been talking about. They haven't changed. RACT's still on there. Hopefully we'll get RACT before 2028, but it's on there at this point in November 2025. And then here's the line kind of showing where we are for the next 12 months. Like I said, the 2023 peer average is the last one we have. Once we have the 2024, we will put that on there at this point. Any questions? Oh, yeah, okay. One of these days.
I'm saving mine for the auditor.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. All right, thanks. Appreciate that. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Hearing no questions, can I have a motion to accept the, Robert? Second?
Second.
Ricky, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, the motion passes. Now we go to the financial audit report.
I guess I'll go and then I'll give it to Scott.
Are you gonna start?
Yeah, I'll introduce him so everybody knows. Get up here. First, I want to acknowledge all the hard work of our staff. I know Shane and the rest of our team did a really good job working with our auditors, but Scott will work through the actual final opinions of the auditors and their stuff, but I'll turn it over to Scott at this point.
Great,
There you
thank you.
go.
She's gonna,
Oh, you're gonna drive, Savette?
I can't handle too many things.
Okay, got it.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Anderson. I'm a partner at Crow. My goal here today is to give you an overview of the audit results for calendar 2024, which is a point in time, and obviously you're already in April, so the focus here is more on the quality of financial reporting than the actual results themselves. The actual results are very similar to what the team reports every year, because there's just a few things that we do at year end, pension adjustments, and then also truing up the leases, et cetera, which sounds like Todd is building in estimating throughout the year. But I think the good thing to know, if I'm on a finance committee or a board member, is what I'm seeing throughout the year reflective of what I'm seeing in the final audit? The answer is yes. So that's good to know when you're comparing budget to actual and having to make some decisions throughout the year, depending on what's happening throughout the year. The primary product of Crow as auditors is to provide an opinion. We provide an opinion at a variety of levels. The first level is on the financial statements themselves, and basically key paragraphs there. In our opinion, we believe the financials are materially presented correctly and the notes and disclosures meet all the standards. That's an unqualified, unmodified, clean opinion. It's the highest form of opinion you can receive. That means management prepares it. We audit those numbers to make sure they're materially correct. We don't make sure they're absolutely correct. We're not auditing every dollar, but what we're looking at is different risk areas and focusing on internal controls and other aspects to look at how they're reporting the information throughout the year. The second level that we audit and provide an opinion, which we're not going to have on the screen, is your compliance with government auditing standards. That's required under your federal audits. Happy to report there are no findings under for internal controls or compliance with laws and regulations. A third area, and there's four, the third area is compliance with your AIP program, which is your federal program. We're also happy to report there are no findings related to those funds used for operating and capital projects. And lastly, PFC compliance. So you're required to have the activity of your passenger facility charges, both the revenues coming in as well as the uses, because they're required to be used for specific purposes. And so we audit that activity each year. Once again, a clean opinion as well. So if you're 4 for 4 today, great. Be on the Philadelphia Phillies, I guess, or then clean up. Next page, please. All right, so this is the balance sheet or the statement of net position. And the way I kind of look at this is, first thing I look at is, does this balance sheet look normal for an airport? The answer is yes, very normal as far as the relationships between what are the types of assets you hold, what are your cash positions, what are your receivables, et cetera. For example, capital assets represent about $327 million out of a total of $389 million, which is about 84% of your assets are tied up in capital assets. That's very clear for you guys, seeing every day the capital improvements you're making. But for other organizations, they may not realize the amount of capital investment it takes to be able to provide the services you're doing. So it's always important to clarify why you're spending money on maintaining those assets and refreshing and rebuilding those assets, because they're really your primary source of revenue in the long run. Another thing that's normal about this balance sheet with other airports is you have about, I don't know how you do your calculation, I just take a straightforward cash calculation, which is about 7 months of cash as of 12/31. So that can fund 7 months of operating expenses, that 29 million, sorry, represents about 7 months. Now you have restricted cash, you have other assets going to be liquidated to cash, but I always want to see something over 6 months of cash, which gives you some cushion on if there's anything that happens throughout the year that might impact your overall revenue flows. So if you add those two together, you're about 90% of your assets are cash and capital assets. It's pretty straightforward. If you go down to the next page, liability section. So from a liability standpoint, there are two major areas that you focus on, like all airports. Bonds payable and your notes, direct financing notes are a key area. Every airport we work with in the country has some form of debt. It's really about how they're paying for it, whether it's general obligation debt or tied directly to revenue sources. So $48 million of debt is not high in relative terms to other airports. I know you guys have other plans going forward for debt issuances, but I think that's a common commonplace with airports on a way to structure. It's like a mortgage, you know, you have revenue streams that are coming in the future that are gonna be able to pay off that debt.
Just for clarification, when you say for other airports, you're talking about our peers,
Comparable, yeah.
right? Comparable, not like larger airports.
Yeah, well, we work with a variety, but yeah, I think structurally they're very similar in a relationship, from a relationship standpoint.
But I just meant bonds payable, right? What we have
Yeah.
for liabilities.
Yeah, nothing.
Among our peer group.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think what you're saying is also any airport. I think it's more any airport, not just our peers. I think it's just a regular balance.
I think it's structurally,
Right, the
all airports would
percentages,
have the
right.
same types of percentages.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Understood.
percent. I'm
It's not
thinking
just
relative
ours,
to
it's just
the- right.
all of them. They might have more money, but the proportion is
Right.
about the same.
It's interesting whether you're a small airport or a very large airport, the relationships are very similar on the balance sheet, so. The other area that we'll focus on is net pension liability, which in your organization is when you take into account the net pension liability as well and offset it by the deferred inflows, outflows, your liability on a net basis is about $366,000, which actually went up from $174,000 in the prior year. However, unlike other airports, it's very low, both dollar-wise and pro rata-wise. The funding of the pension is very good compared to other airports as far as that goes. Now, that could change in a given year because you have actuarial changes that you're managing. And I know that you guys have, an actuary comes in and updates each year the assumptions that are made.
But our pension is at a minimal distress level as of the end of last year.
Right.
We're 90-some% funded.
Many airports, big and small, have significant
Deficits.
deficits in their net pension. And also some have other post-employment obligations or have obligations. So that's something that you're able to manage with your bargaining units and with your employees. That is one that's unusual. And then lastly, if we're looking at net position, a net position is broken down into three different areas. The net investment in capital assets was essentially all your capital assets less the related debt. Restricted would be things that are externally restricted, primarily for debt service, $4 million. And then unrestricted is $31.23 million. The one thing that people start to look at from the outside is, gosh, you have $31.3 million available to spend. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Most airports have long-term funding plans, both for operating and capital needs. So that's always a messaging if you have bondholders or other people from the community looking at your financial statement and saying, hey, we could spend 31 million on something new this year. We don't need to change X, Y, and Z. We can just use that money. That's not the case. You have future plans, and every entity I work with, a lot of them are even in a negative position because of their pension and OPEB obligations. So that's one of the reasons why you guys are in a positive net position there. So that gives you a little bit of background on the balance sheet and how we look at it from the outside perspective. Go to the next page. Revenue-wise, I think as I look at the year, I view it as pretty good growth in revenue relative to your peers. I think your peer growth is good relative to other groups. I think that's primarily driven by your proximity, to Philadelphia, Newark, your air cargo, some of the other things you're doing that are driving more traffic, that are not solely reliant on just the, normal passenger flights. You're building other revenue capacity, which I think is critical. Your overall growth in your operating revenues was about 7.4%. Hopefully that's what Todd told you before.
Yeah.
Close enough, right?
Yeah, close enough.
On the expenses, your expenses went up about 3.8%. The bottom line is if you could scroll down, please. Bottom line, we had an increase of $11.7 million. Now, once again, if you're looking at this from the outside saying, gosh, you guys made $11 million this year, why do you need more revenues? Or why can't we incur more expenses? Primary reason for that is these federal and state grid, these are all going to capital. So although we call it revenue, $14.6 million, it's all going toward capital assets. So you have to generate net income in order to make those capital capital purchases. So if someone were asking, why do we have a profit this year? It's because the way that we drive this is by getting federal grants and state grants that will pay for the capital improvements that we're making. So hopefully that makes sense from a big picture standpoint, because I always look at it from an outsider saying, gosh, we got a lot of cash, we got great net income, we can do all kinds of things, right? And Thomas, you know you can't do that, right?
Don't tell Tom that.
Yeah.
You know you can't do that, so I have to say in front of them, in front of you guys as well. But that's very similar to other organizations. You know, you have to be generating positive net income in order to be able to do the things you want to do. So that's really the primary highlight on the income statement. I know Todd does an excellent job of giving you month-to-month information, but I just like to reaffirm how we kind of look at it from the outside perspective. So, all right, next page, please. Actually, could you go up one? There we go. So for those who'd like to just talk about cash versus accrual, this gives you an overview of where does your cash go, where does it come from and where does it go. Operating receipts from customers of 42 million, cash paid to suppliers for goods and services, cash paid to employees. So the net operating activity was 9.7 million. It was actually higher in the prior year, it was about 12.4 million. The primary difference essentially relates to the goods and services, which had a $4 million increase in cash flow going out. I don't read too much into it because a lot of it has to do with timing of accounts payable and accounts receivable and how money's coming in. So nothing to worry about there. Federal grants received 2 million. Obviously, that's the CARES Act money that you received during the year. And it's slightly less than the prior year, but you're basing that based on how quickly you're incurring those costs that are reimbursable. So it's going to vary. I think you had, what, 2.4 left in 2025 to spend.
Yeah.
Cash flows from capital and related financing activities. So this is all the stuff that impacts your capital program. Capital grants received, which is primarily the federal and state funds, 14.1 million. PFC and CFCs combining for about 2.3 million. I think a key number here is $22 million going out for acquisition of capital assets during the year. So that's a primary cash flow going out. And typically, unless you have a new bond issue, this is always going to be a negative. It's typically money going out. In the prior year, you had a bond issue of about $8 million that helped fund some of that. But typically, you're always going to have a negative here because mostly the timing isn't going to be exactly the same. Interest received 1.4 million, which was about 50% higher than the prior year. Thank you, interest rate. And lastly, a net increase of 598,000. So anytime you're seeing net income and you're seeing net increase in cash, that's typically a positive sign. If you're seeing positive income and negative cash, you just got to watch and make sure it's not just timing, make sure there's nothing else going on out there. But I think it's this case, I would expect it to be in that range based on the level of activity you had here with your capital activity. So, all right, we're in the home stretch here. I'm going to skip that next page and go to bonds payable. We had questions before about bonds. You have 3 current bond issues that total a net of $48 million. As far as those go, there's no changes during the year. They all paid their normal principal and interest payments throughout the year. We're not aware of any bond violations or covenant violations or anything in that regard related to the debt. As you go further into the future, obviously, any new debt you're going to have is probably all parity, right? It's all parity debt. It's all going to be of equal value to bond investors as far as their hierarchy. So this is normal for most airports. And most airports are doing revenue bonds. And there's still a lot of activity out there, even though rates are higher. But I think we're seeing a little bit of slowdown in bond issues across the board. All right, next page. All right, this very busy schedule I'll make very easy. We had this is the scheduled expenditure of federal awards, which is all the projects you're managing. One reason we put this up there is just to show the complexity of how many different grants you have you're managing in a given year. So there's more than a dozen grants representing different projects. So each of these requires its own grant document, its own administration. It's a lot of engineering time, a lot of finance time, coordinating all this. Second aspect is it provided $11.4 million of revenue during the year from the federal funds, and the other funds, about $3 million from the state. So I think that is a lot less than the prior year. The prior year was 20 million, but if you remember, the prior year had a lot more construction activity related to your whole checkpoint system. So, and last but not least, if you go to the next page, please. This is what gets sent to the federal government, and it just summarizes what I've told you already, that we have a clean opinion for the financial statements. There were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies reported from the financials. We also provided an unmodified, clean opinion related to your federal awards that we just talked about, with no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. The program that we audit is the Airport Improvement Program, and you do qualify as a low-risk auditee, which just means that there are no significant findings and you've met all the requirements for filing each year. Now, I did mention that we also do a PFC compliance report. We didn't present that here, but that's a separate report from this. And we do audit the activity that's flowing in and out of that fund. So in summary, hopefully I gave you a little bit of comparison of what your balance sheet and income statement look like relative to other airports. Two, pointing out the consistency of what we see in the audit versus what you may see throughout the year, except for a few exceptions like the pension adjustment, the true up with the airlines, things like that, which it sounds like Todd and Shane and his team are trying to estimate and try to build that in, which is difficult. It is an estimate. But what I'd be looking for if I was a finance committee would see, is there some large adjustment that should have been done in March that doesn't get done until a year later? And we did not see that in our audit results for the year. So, one last thing, there was one new GASB, which is an accounting pronouncement that impacted your recognition of compensated absences. That adjustment normally would require a prior period presentation of that. However, when looking at it with management, the impact of that was about $464,000 expense, which increased your compensated absences liability. Essentially, that is driven by how you, what your policies are related to accumulating, investing, vacation, sick days, et cetera. And it required you to recognize more of those expenses on a real-time basis rather than in the future. Because it was only $464,000, management and Crow agreed that we could run it through the current year financial statements. So there was $464,000 hitting 2024 that could have been presented as a prior year. We thought it was immaterial, and it also impacts your unison true-up, which would require the airport to go back in time to refresh the true-up from the prior year, what we're all focusing on now, right? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. But that's all. I appreciate you guys listening. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Yeah.
A question. Certainly seems like a very strong lean and a strong opinion. So congrats to you, Todd, and your team there. And the one slide that had the cost of goods sold there, I think you mentioned the $4 million variance this year. You didn't seem concerned about that, but I was just curious, is that representative of something special that came up last year, or just representative of an overall increase in the cost of the thing, of the goods?
You're operating, okay, so the cash flow was about a 4 million change.
Yeah.
The expense change was a 3.8% expense change. So I was saying from the relative terms.
That's.
I was looking at from the looking back at the gap presentation,
Mhm.
it was only overall about a $2 million deficit. And I'm not saying 2 million is not a lot, because expenses are going up, and I think it's inflationary driven in most cases, right?
Yeah,
Wage
that's what I was
inflation
wondering.
Basically,
and
most-
consumable goods inflation were the primary drivers of those expenses.
Yeah, understood. That's what, that was my question, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make 2 or 4 million sound like nothing, it's just trying to look at it
No,
from a
understood.
variable standpoint.
Yeah, good, thank you.
What is PFC?
Oh, passenger facility charges. So, and those have to be approved by the FAA, and the projects have to be approved by the FAA as how those funds are used. And so they have to track, I don't know how many different uses, is it all debt service? Yeah. Your organization is using it for debt service, so the money you collect, you have to use it for principal and interest on your debt.
We're using it for debt service and the multimodal.
Oh, for two capital and debt
Multimodal.
service, yeah. But those
That's
purposes.
probably the primary stuff, the multimodal
Yeah, those purposes have to be approved by the FAA, and they have to track to make sure they're being used for those purposes.
and the connector. And the connector.
Any other questions?
Just let me jump on Ricky's comments. Nice job, Todd, to you and your team.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Todd. I'd like to accept a motion to accept the audited financial statement.
I'll make that.
Paul? Kevin, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
You can certainly sit there.
Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes. The last thing we have on the action item agenda is approval of additional depository accounts, and I understand we're taking on a couple of new banks.
Yes, as you saw from Scott's report, how well we did with our interest, and that's one of the things we use is we try to work with a lot of different banks to make sure we maximize our cash on our interest. So 2 banks that we're going to add are Nutropoli, John's bank, he's not here. They had the best 7-month rate, and American, the best 12-month rate. So this gives us somebody to throw in the mix with some of our CDs. That's what we're going to add in there, particularly some of the stuff that's going to be parked a little bit. So we try to earn a little bit more interest on that. That helps us out long term, and we have to come to the board with new banking relationships. So any questions, concerns? That's 4.2. I don't know if you're.
No, is it, what's the amount we're looking to invest?
Probably about 250 on each initially. Any other questions? All
Hearing
right.
none, is there a motion to approve the additional depository accounts? Anybody?
I mean,
Paul, second. Ricky? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes. Is there any new business to come before the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll be consistent, I'll make it mine.
Now, Bob beat.
Oh, Bob, well,
I
I'm
was
sorry.
back here giving you the-
Oh, no. Behind you, 'cause Shane's
We're adjourned.
Shane's out of.
I'm calling to order the executive committee. Sylvette, will you call the roll, please?
Glenn Reedman,
Present.
Okay.
Mike Stershik,
Here.
Frank Fasciano,
Here.
John Hayes, Paul Anthony.
I'm here.
We have a quorum, and we do not
Thank
have
you.
public comment.
Thanks.
No public comment. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the April 24th, 2025 meeting, moved by Mike, second by Paul. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Next item, the approval of the Florio Perucci, Steinhardt, Capelli, and Tipton LLC invoices for April 25. Any, take a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second, Frank? Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Approved. Next.
Does that all fit on a pay to the order of line?
You can use the initials.
And speaking, Madam Solicitor, you're up next. Code of Ethics Annual Training Update.
We'll have the training on Tuesday after the board meeting. Please plan accordingly. You probably need an extra 30 to 45 minutes or so.
All right. And Colin will be giving us an update on the public and government relations and you're on.
Well, good morning. Thank you again for the opportunity always to come up and talk a little bit about what we're doing from a public relations and government relations side, as well as customer engagement. For those that are new to the board, typically from a public relations side, I'll talk to you offline if you have any questions about messaging, communications, or public relations in that vein. But from a government relations side is where I want to kick off. Aviation and Aerospace Day took place on May 6th in Harrisburg in the Keystone Building. This is important for the aviation industry, and I'll explain really going in a couple of slides why. But this is really an opportunity for the aviation industry and legislative leaders to come together to talk about the state of aviation in regards to workforce, in regards to a lot of different projects, funding. Really, this is everybody coming together in Harrisburg to tackle those tough subjects. And while we were down there, had a lot of additional meetings from the PennDOT Bureau of Aviation, House Majority Leader, our state reps and state senators, to really keep them updated on what's going on here in the Lehigh Valley in regards to aviation, what our plans are. That has been essential to us when it comes to grant funding and really for them to understand where the airport is going. We are looked at as an economic driver. They see the growth. They see the importance of what the airport is doing here in the region, but they have to know before we start putting in grant applications. So the constant communication, any opportunity that we have to talk to our legislators, we take advantage of. I was down there for Aviation and Aerospace Day. So during that time period, I talked about the Lehigh Valley. We've been busy, very, very busy. And the reason why is this picture right here. The parking structure that we've been talking about is coming on the horizon. We all know that parking is becoming an issue here at the airport. We're seeing it, we're hearing it. You can look out there today and say, well, there are plenty of spaces, but back in February, we were opening up our overflow lot. And it's opening up sooner and sooner. And when PennDOT was here not too long ago, they said, you guys have to start to look at something. And really, we're in that position where land is an issue for us, where vertical may be the only way we can go. I've had these discussions at the federal level with Congressman McKenzie, as well as Senator McCormick's office recently. And then from the state side, with PennDOT Secretary Mike Carroll, who fully understands the project, as well as both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican in the House, as well as the Senate, to have them understand that this is where we're looking. Obviously, there are a lot of other things that we have going on here, smaller projects, but from a large-scale project, when you think about the connector and what it took to get there, for those of you that were along for that ride, there's a lot of different funding sources. There's a lot of belief that this project needed to be done in order to make sure the airport would continue to grow. Well, we've grown. We're over that 1 million passenger mark. You see where the trajectory is going for the passengers, and we can bring them through here, and Darren can bring the service. If we have no place to park them, it's going to be an issue. And I think that's the understanding, that we don't want to end up in that place. So we've been talking to our legislative leaders about that, as well as DCED. There are funding cycles coming up. Projects like this are over multi-year, so that gives us an opportunity really to tap into several funding cycles over time. These are the discussions we're having at the legislative level at this point. I wanted to bring your attention to this. This is the Aviation Investment and Reform Act. It's called AIR. The Aviation Council of Pennsylvania is really leading this charge. We talk about funding. If you looked at the governor's budget, they talk a lot about the transit side. Well, we don't want aviation to be left behind. $27 million is really the current funding level for aviation. That doesn't get very far from the state level. Mr. Brooks is shaking his head, and he understands because you live in that world too.
I'm begging for 30.
So there is a concerted effort from across the Commonwealth to bring this legislation to the governor, bring it through the Commonwealth. The real gist of everything, I mean, it's legislation, so it's boiled down, jet fuel taxes, all these types of little nuances to it, is the creation of this aviation trust fund. And what it's going to allow us to do is have a stronger predictability of project planning. Because when we plan a project, how are we gonna pay for it? That's the question. So having more money available, that's part of it. It can also be used for different other things like workforce development initiatives and other avenues that we can sort of take this funding towards. It's in its early infancy stages. It's in Harrisburg. It's working its way through, and we'll see where it lands. But I wanted you to be aware of it because if it does come through, it's great for all three of our airports, not just ABE, it's Queen City, and Brayton. So all three airports would have access to this type of funding in the AIR Act. And I just wanted to put it on your radar as we move forward here. And I'll update you as time goes on, but right now it's being reviewed in Harrisburg and being looked at a legislative level. Last thing on government, I wanted to let you know about the Real ID rollout. We heard a lot about it. On May 7th, it started. According to our TSA officials, we spoke to them earlier this week, we have a 96% compliance rate daily at ABE. So 96% of our passengers daily coming through are good. So that's fantastic. The message got out there and people have some type of Real ID compliant document. About a handful, they said, are going through the advanced screening for passengers. So that's still in place. The next step is the full compliance, which is the, if you don't have it, you potentially don't fly. No timeline on that yet from the federal side. I think the success, I didn't think you heard a lot about Real ID issues across the country for those that were affected by it. But TSA, that's at a federal level, is waiting for that next step. And they don't have really a time frame on that. Did anybody have a question on the government side before I move on to education? Yes, sir.
Where's the funding coming from for the AIR Act?
Well, there's the jet fuel tax. They want to increase that. I think, you know, there are other different avenues. They're trying to generate some type of revenue. I can send you a bullet point list.
Curious.
Yeah, they're trying to weave their way through it, Jonathan, actually, you know, and I think that's always the question, right? How are we paying for this, right? So, but I can send you a bullet point list on that point.
Rainy day fund?
Which I had a discussion earlier this week with Senator Coleman, which is
Not in his wheelhouse.
not in his wheelhouse. So I think that's gonna be the big question. I wanted to move.
Any impact from the federal side in terms of budget cuts or anything for the FAA and relate to us?
No, not at this point.
We don't know.
Not at this
Sorry,
point.
we
Yeah,
don't
not
know.
at this point. I mean, again. The FAA has a lot going on. I think you can look in the news and a lot of different things that are being discussed at that level. Again, we've spoken to Congressman McKenzie. We've spoken to Senator McCormick. We've spoken to Senator Fetterman's office coming up here in the next couple of weeks. They understand where we are. I think, though, Ryan, there are some direct FAA grants that could still process their way through. You know, not all of them are handled that way, right, where they're just pulled. So at this point, no, we're not seeing anything. So outside of the government side, we went to building our future workforce. One of the focuses of Paula Bonstein, who's our manager of customer experience, and Leanne Hill, who works with Paula, is outside of just the passenger experience, what are we doing to build an education program for the aviation industry? And we've spent a lot of time doing this in a variety of different ways. So you hear about this during Tom's director's reports. We go to career fairs, we're at STEAM expos, we're out in the community trying to engage students, young people at all different educational levels to choose aviation as a potential career. And that has worked out well. What's changed over time is, yeah, we go, if you look at the lower left-hand corner, you see Paul and Leanne, and we've got our table of all the things that we do here at the airport, but there's always an interest in pilots. So we've tried to bring commercial airline pilots currently out into the community so that they understand the road to becoming a pilot. So finding ways to, again, upgrade and elevate what we can do and bring information to the community is important. This is a slide I had shown to you last year, and I call it the takeoff point because in February of 2024, we started working with school districts around the Lehigh Valley. We posted retreats, in-service days, site visits, bringing them here to the LNAA, bringing them here behind the fence, and talking about what's available when it comes to careers in aviation. We've gone to schools to talk about it. We've also joined occupational advisory committees, and we also now have several of our staff members that are part of OACs to figure out and find a way for educational institutions within the Lehigh Valley to understand what we're looking for, and then for us to understand how we can bring it to them. So I want to show you this quick little video, which is just about a minute, and it's with 3 different people that work within the school district, 2 from Bethlehem area, and then 1 from Northampton. Sorry about that.
In the fall, staff from the Bethlehem Area Vocational Technical School had the opportunity to tour the airport. The highlighted areas were security, fire and safety, and facilities, including HVAC, electrical, and welding.
My name is Dana Huber, and I am the supervisor of the Adult Education Program at Bethlehem Area Vocational Technical School. We have been working with Lehigh Valley International Airport to expose our students to the opportunities that are available at the airport. I have taken several groups of students to tour the maintenance, hangar, and learn about the industry. I have also toured the airport with a group of educators to increase our awareness of the opportunities at the airport.
At Northampton, we are very passionate about building partnerships with local industries and companies to educate our staff and students on the many career opportunities that are right here in our backyards. With the Lehigh Valley International Airport only 4 miles away from our district, it was a no-brainer to become a close partner with them, as we saw an opportunity to showcase the aviation industry as a whole. These visits to our local airport have really started to help educate our teachers and our educators in our district about the various jobs and positions that fall within the aviation industry. From there, we're able to backwards design our instruction and incorporate some of the same skills and competencies that the airport expects back into our daily instruction. We could not be more grateful for our partnership with the Lehigh Valley International Airport and look forward to working with them again this upcoming summer.
So what have we done? 9 students from Babbitt's came here to the airport. There was a 6-week program with our fire department where they went out, and you can see the experience they had learning about what it is to be an ARF member. We had a 3-week program with our maintenance department where they went out with HVAC and electrical to learn about all the different parts of the airfield. You have, airfield electrical, but then you have landside electrical, 2 totally different areas. So we've had the ability to bring these students on. We had 7 students from the Bethlehem Area School District come on for career exploration. They met with our police department, a commercial airline pilot, and ARF. And this summer we'll have 7 students from Northampton Area School District. They're going to participate in a week-long job shadow program. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it grassroots. We're going to find a way to bring people onto the airfield and learn about all the different careers. Because I can tell you that after they've come through here, some of them wide-eyed had no idea that their jobs were available here at the airport. Thanks to Dawn, because this came up during that previous discussion, the Generation Next program with Community Action Lehigh Valley, which is in our schools, 35 students have come through the airport. Some of them had never even been to an airport. And now they're learning about jobs that are available here. Ramp agents, pilots. Everybody thinks you have to be a pilot or a flight attendant. No. There's aviation mechanics. There's so many different jobs. There are the Todds, the Darrens, the Toms. There's all different ways and roads to lead here. So it's been really great to have this program take off this way, and we're going to continue to expand it. In fact, from the Generation Next, they'd like to do more of the job shadowing piece. They like to incorporate that where they can come and not just learn about them, but follow somebody and understand the job. So we're looking forward to continuing that. We also went with Lehigh University graduate students. And this is something that we were approached about through the Da Vinci Science Center, where they were doing a project on studying organizational behavior and complex systems within large companies. Basically, these 4 students looked at Lehigh Valley International Airport in a competitive manner when it comes to air service and customer experience, but also AI and sustainability and how we're incorporating that. So this was, again, taking a new step out into bringing other students and other individuals from the Lehigh Valley into the airport and having them learn about, what's going on here at AVE. Our aviation education program currently stands in this way. We've got our tours, our fairs, our STEAM expos, speaking engagements. We're working with LTRI-C, we're working with LCTI. The aviation camp was something we like to do where we can bring more kids into the fold to learn about aviation. And then we have these job shadow opportunities currently at the high school level for anybody that is interested. And what's great is that the schools are not just sending people here. They are looking to find out who is interested in aviation. They're sharing what they're interested in so we can tailor what they're looking for and bring them in here to have them learn more about that job specifically. Outside of the education program from a customer experience standpoint, it's been a pretty busy time. TSA has had a lot going on. If you look at the left-hand side of your screen, Jerry Spiro, who's the new FSD for TSA for our region, talked about having a press conference on what's prohibited items to bring onto an aircraft. We had our CAT systems that were implemented, and if you remember back, we did have some firearms issues earlier this year where people were bringing firearms to the checkpoint. We worked with our Select group with the totems to bring more messaging, and I think that's gone really, really well. Allegiant celebrating 20 years of service from ABE. We had I think one of the last board meetings that we had, it was Take Your Child to Work Day. So the kids were all here learning about aviation. Moser Elementary School here in Allentown, we have worked with them on a project, a volunteer project through the Volunteer Center of the Greater Lehigh Valley to help them revamp their auditorium. So they wanted some paws painted. We provided a new sound system for them. So we're out in the community helping schools as well. And then our police department just participated in Coffee with Cops over at Target during Law Enforcement Week. So that was a great opportunity for everybody to meet our police officers out in the community. Our upcoming event schedule, we have our hotel groundbreaking coming up on Thursday, June the 5th. Our Wings for All program with the Arc of Lehigh and Northampton Counties is coming up on Saturday, June the 7th at 10 a.m. We're going to have about 36 individuals come through to try the flying process. Thanks to Delta for helping to support that. Our junior fire camp is growing. We did 2 days last year. We're actually doing 4 days this year. So the ARC department's doing a great job in promoting that and making sure that we're getting more kids in the airport. Fear of Flying seminar, our polo match, and our plane pull are all on the schedule coming up. And then just a reminder, when you look at some of the information that we put out in the community, we have a lot of different forms that we're using in order to share all the excitement and all the busyness that's going on at the airport. So just stay tuned for a lot of those different elements, the newsletter, podcast, social media, e-blast, and of course our general aviation one, which is flight plan. Did anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Great update. I have a question and a comment. The slide you had there with the job shadowing was geared towards high school age students, and then the tours on the left-hand side. What is the sweet spot in students for those tours and so forth?
So you mean how many?
Like what age group?
What age group?
Yeah.
The job shadowing program, we're really focused in on freshmen, sophomores, and juniors and that early. Seniors, yes, but I think we're trying to get that early group to come in so that, if you're talking about, let's look at maintenance, the piece of it. If we can have them here as a sophomore and then maybe have them here later on and have them learning more about the airfield, I think we're looking for that piece of it. The tours in general, if someone's interested in becoming a air traffic controller, we've done one-offs. If somebody wants a tour of, it's really the amount of kids, if you bring them here on the airfield, we try to keep it somewhere in that 7 to 10 range at one time in regards to the job shadowing piece of it, at one time. But if we're doing tours, we've had as many as 20, 25 through here at some point.
And what's the youngest age group?
We go to junior high or?
Yeah, so we do, tours we do is, elementary schools, junior high, I mean, the general tour, yes.
Yeah. Great. And my comment is, you may know this already, but I played in an outing on Monday for Moravian University, and in the president's remarks, he said that they were going to be announcing shortly, I don't know, the next couple of months, a program that Moravian's going to offer in aeronautics, and found that to be very interesting. I didn't share any other details, but you know, that could certainly be in line with some of your efforts here, and just wanted to share that.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you very much.
I was
That's
pretty
great.
impressed.
And I just want to say I'm so grateful to the people at this airport, how friendly and kind, and the ways that you guys go out of your way to welcome people to do things like this is amazing, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you for I mean, that's a great program, and I'll tell you, they have been so invested in coming in here. And I like the fact that Matt wants to grow it even further. I always think that's great. So thank you.
So you introduce the students to the trades or whatever occupations, careers. What are the schools doing to prepare them for that? For any career, like mechanical, that they need to get their math skills up. Any requirements that would help them get into this field?
So what we've done is, Paul, to your point is, we have taken, say, our superintendent of maintenance, and he's now part of their OAC, and he goes over there and he meets with their instructors.
Right.
And what
trade is that, or what career? Because the OACs are particular to each craft or trade.
So he goes over there, he's over there for the maintenance side, so HVAC, electrical, he oversees that whole.
Vehicle maintenance.
Yes, the vehicle maintenance, the whole gamut of them over for the maintenance shop. So, and he's a VOTEC product, so he goes over there and he has a discussion about, you know, what they're learning. And what we've tried to do, Paul, is we had a meeting recently, is we're trying to now, they've come over here and they've learned about it, they've seen it. So now the next step, and it's worked, the next step is what tangibly can we correlate between what you're saying, which is what they're learning, and then bring it over here to have them do something.
Okay.
You know, so you know, in its infancy, it's how is this going to work? And now I think Babbitt's, as well as our maintenance department or whoever, is saying, okay, now, so that's why we do it in the springtime of the year, because what they use it as is, we're gonna teach them in the early part of the year, and then they come in the springtime.
Okay, it's like for us, we're heavy in math.
Okay.
And we found students that weren't passing our math test, so Babbitt's had just an instructor there for math to help them on the apprenticeship side for electrical. I didn't know if you needed the same kind of help or not.
I'll check.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'll look into that, yeah.
It's easy for a school to say there's a buy-in, right? But it's the action part.
Yeah.
And, you know, we gotta make sure that it's actionable and we hold them to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
With some of the action in it, it's one thing to, like, you know, emphasize the education, to show them or expose them to the opportunities. How do you incentivize them to make that jump from high school into the workforce, as opposed to going to college?
It's not working.
Like,
Sorry, John, no, Bob, I'll say it.
how do you incentivize them, like, if you go through this program or whatever, like, there's a guaranteed job, you know, waiting if you meet this criteria, right? Like, you see a lot of vocational schools doing that, but how do we show them, you know, the I don't know, the award at the end of the you know, road? Because I think we lose a lot of people. Like, you introduce them, they're excited, they love it when they're on the field, they go back to the classroom and you lose them. So it's like, how do you incentivize them?
The Century Fund has been working with students to promise them jobs when they finish going through that program.
So they're doing
What's
that.
family.
And I have a meeting with Yusuf coming up next week on the 29th. So the Century Fund is, so they're, again, finding those ways is going to be
making it tangible, like more tangible, or feeling like it's in reach.
Absolutely.
Like, right, if we could partner with Century Fund, that'd be awesome. Because like Dawn said, if you can, I shouldn't say promise, but there's an opportunity there that you can hire these kids when they go through that program, that incentivizes them. Now, Bob made a comment, pay them. We do pay them, but kids nowadays.
I didn't hear that comment.
I whispered it.
You whispered it, and I'll tell you, it's hard to get I shouldn't say kid, but working 5 days a week. But I gotta be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, you mean? So the soft skills actually do matter.
It's not easy to incentivize them, to show them. I can, at a personal level, like, I just did a 20-year career in Bethlehem as a firefighter, right? And as I come to the end of that career, my 32-year son is looking to get hired in Bethlehem. And I had to literally sit down with a piece of paper, show him what a pension is, show him what everything works, like show him how the food got on his table and walk him through, because he has a decent job.
Yeah.
As a 32-year-old man, but at the end of that, he could be gone tomorrow. It's in the private sector, he could be gone tomorrow. Are they gonna give you a 20-year career is what I told him. Are they gonna guarantee you 20, as long as you don't do nothing stupid, which is, a possibility. But, I had to, and that was with my own son who lived it and grew up through it. And you had to, so imagine with these other kids, you have to do the same type of thing. You have to walk them through the benefits of the job,
And I think to everybody, I think this is the great next step, because for the educational community, they had no idea. When we brought them into the airport, they had no idea. They it was to everybody else. It was the flight attendant and the pilot. Or you work at the air traffic control tower. That if you're only interested in that, that's a place for you to be. As we and we just continue to hear from more districts. They want, so how do we, through Yusuf, through other organizations, how do we work to now, to your point, incentivize and push them? And I think for Babbitt's, that's one of the things. To come here, they're looking for quality work early on in the year. They don't just say, oh, you're going here. They want students that are engaged, that are doing the work to come over here and participate in a program like this.
Right, and I think your tours, you're using guidance counselors, right?
Yes.
Because that's key. You get them engaged.
Superintendents, guides, the whole,
Right.
they're all
Okay,
coming
good.
over here.
That's what I was gonna say, Paul. We actually, our training director, to get more buy-in from the guidance counselors, went out to all the school districts, got the guidance counselors, worked with City Center downtown, and took the guidance counselors on the tour of like a real-life construction site.
Right.
This is how it works. And it seemed to help the guidance counselors get the buy-in. It seemed to help the guidance counselors get the buy-in to actually talk to the kids that don't want to go to college about maybe the technical schools.
Yeah.
And there we did see like the moving of the pendulum after that big show that was put on.
That's great.
Right? I mean, because most guidance counselors never seen a construction site. It's just like they're oblivious to it, and that's okay. It's not their line of work.
Getting them there and letting them see and understand it.
Right.
That there's opportunity.
It was huge.
Is big.
Any other questions for Colin?
Yeah, did anybody job shadow Todd?
I'm not one of that.
You make sure he's got these charts down.
At least one
Hey, man, I know you couldn't resist it, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Colin?
Yeah, really nice. Good job.
We do not have any new business. Madam Solicitor, do we have a need for an executive session? No. I'll take a motion for adjournment. Executive committee is adjourned. We will move to Dawn. Ladies and gentlemen, my boss and the boss of the Northampton County delegation is here. Not your boss, man. The Honorable Lamont McCoy. Welcome. Thank you. They're going to start the committee and then Dawn will.
Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome to the May 22nd, 2025 Business Committee meeting. Sylvette, can you please call the roll?
Dawn Godshell,
Here.
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
James Irwin.
Here.
Frank Facciano. I know he's here. Kevin Surface.
Here.
Jonathan Strauss.
Here.
Chris Worley. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
Yes, we do. Mr. Lamont.
Where do we give public comment from? I don't have a lot of experience in public meetings. And I didn't have anything better to do this morning either. No, it's wonderful to be here with you. And first, let me just say, I have been making my rounds as I'm coming toward the end of my second term as county executive and will no longer be Northampton County executive when the calendar turns, coming around and saying one thing that I think our board needs to know. First of all, it is a duty and a privilege of the county executive of Northampton County to appoint half this board. And I think you'll all agree that we did a good job in that regard. Terrific board members here. The other thing, board, I would like to tell you is what a wonderful working relationship that Northampton County has had with Tom and his entire team for this entire time. Tom's just done such a terrific job, and we appreciate our relationship with you very much and the excellent work you've been doing here.
Thank you.
But that's not what brings me here today. What brings me here today is that you are considering a responsible contractor ordinance. And I wanted to share with you our experience in Northampton County with the RCO. So there are really three questions that any entity, public entity, has to ask themselves when discussing something like a responsible contractor ordinance. The first is it legal? So often you hear people say, that's discriminatory. If you don't have an apprenticeship program, you are discriminating against us. Well, I have the answer to that. The Association of Builders Contractors, after I proposed and passed an RCO in Northampton County, sued Northampton County. We prevailed in district court, and then we prevailed in the Third Circuit, which means it's legal. So in where you're sitting today, RCOs are legal. So there is absolutely no legal argument against an RCO. The second question we often get is, well, aren't your bids going to go down if, for example, you're requiring a contractor to have a certified apprenticeship program? Well, in Northampton County, we did exactly that analysis. And I will tell you, correlation is not causation, okay? So I can't tell you that we got more bids because we passed an RCO. But what I will tell you is we didn't get fewer. Our bids actually went up after we passed the RCO. So a main criticism of an RCO is you'll get fewer bids and that will make our work more expensive. That is not true. And finally, I want to share the experience that we had with our RCO. When we built our new forensic center, we did that during the height of the pandemic. And if everyone remembers, there were restrictions, you had to stay at home, supply chains were completely disrupted. We built our forensic center under our responsible contractor ordinance on time and under budget during a global pandemic. So the notion that a responsible contractor ordinance would make things more expensive for you is just not true. And so if you have any other questions for me about our experience with the responsible contractor ordinance, I'd be happy to entertain them because I know it's an important issue. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Mike.
I'm not sure, this is probably in the material that we were sent that I didn't read in depth. But what is there a limit on the size of the contract for which an RCO is?
So I think our original ordinance was $250,000. Okay. And then it got amended down to $100,000. Okay. And we have not experienced any kind of deficit in people bidding on our work because that moved from 250 to 100, because that was one of my concerns. And actually, we've actually seen our bids go up. So,
okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? Oh, there was one I forgot. I should have had notes. This is the problem with speaking extemporaneously. One of the things that you hear about the RCO that is a criticism of it is that because you require an apprenticeship program, and I think this is an important point, that there'll be people who cannot bid, that it's a union-focused sort of proposal. It is not. All you need is a certified apprenticeship program by the United States Department of Labor, and I think maybe or the Pennsylvania Department of Labor, but I'm not an expert on that. When we did our apprenticeship program, we had two contractors that were non-union contractors working on the forensic center because they met the definition of having a certified apprenticeship program. You see the Association of Building Contractors who sued us and I defeated in court. They have an apprenticeship program that is certified that their members can buy into. So it is not exclusively a proposal that benefits unions. And again, in the real world, we had two non-union contractors on our forensic center, which was built under the RCO. So not only is it not legally discriminatory, in the real world as a practical matter, it doesn't discriminate either, as long as you have the ABC or Associated Builders Contract certification. So it's really, those are the main arguments against it, and our experience has been really good for us. So thank you very much. I don't want to delay your meeting any further. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you, guys.
Okay. Going back to action items, the approval of the meeting minutes. I need a motion to approve the April 24th, 2025 meeting minutes. Kevin? Is there a second? Jonathan, thank you. Any changes or comments? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Second point of action is the award of the aviation fuel supplier contract, and we'll go to Darren for that.
Thanks, Don. So we recently issued an RFQP for aviation fuel suppliers. Just gonna walk through a little here. Last time we went through this process was back in 2012, where World Fuel was selected as the supplier on a 5-year contract. At the time, the beginning of that contract, they invested $1 million into the airport and FBO operations, and those are around back in 2012. $1 million was a gigantic windfall for the airport authority at that point in time. So, and then a few years later, August 2016, we extended that contract by an additional 3 years. They made another investment in the operations of $275,000. And back in 2020, we wanted to add some capacity to the fuel farm. So we had, at that point, 150,000 gallons of Jet A storage at the fuel farm. We wanted to add another 50,000 gallon tank. And World Fuel came in and said, we'll do that improvement, we'll pay for it, we'll handle the project if you'll agree to another 5-year extension. And at that point in time, we brought that to the board and agreed to extend 5 more years. And it was decided then that that would be the last extension before we go back out for another RFQP. So in April, we issued that RFQP, sent it out then, and a few weeks ago, we received 4 proposals, which was about exactly what we were expecting to receive. So pretty happy with the amount of proposals we got. Relatively quick summary of the proposals here. You'll see the 4 companies that proposed were AEG Fuels, AV Fuel, Titan Aviation Fuel, and World Fuel, all large, multinational companies that supply aviation gasoline and Jet A to airports and airfields across the country and around the world. So looking at pricing, we did the differential to what our current contact price is now. So you can see 3 of the 4 proposed a lower price than we're paying today on jet fuel and avgas, and one of them was a little higher than that. The SAF is sustainable aviation fuel. This is the first time we've actually gone out and asked the suppliers about that. It's a fairly new product. We're starting to see it hit the market a little more, people trying to offset that carbon footprint. So we just basically asked, can you demonstrate to us that you can supply 10% of our volume in sustainable fuel if we decide to go that route, which I think we will at some point start adding sustainable fuel to our Jet A inventory. So again, 3 of them said yes, 1 didn't answer the question, so I'm assuming that means they can't, but we did not go back for clarifications just because we weren't really considering their proposal as we reviewed everything else with it. So the real savings and value of this come the next one on the truck lease cost. We spend right now about $200,000 annually leasing our fuel trucks. So you'll see both AV Fuel and World Fuel have proposed to give us those at no cost for the 5-year contract. So about $1 million of savings to us over those 5 years. Also be new trucks from what we have today. The World Fuel one is replacing anything outside of a 2020. So anything older than 2020. I think we have 1 truck that is a 21 or a 22, so they won't replace that one today, but everything else will be brand new equipment. So should also see our maintenance costs go down a little bit on those. And then you come to sort of the added value piece of it. They've all proposed some sort of investment into the operation. They've all, kind of varied with the other things they've proposed. I just tried to do an estimated value at the end and sort of make an apples to apples comparison, and that kind of factors in the free truck leases, the money they're putting up, and the whole thing. So before I flip it, anybody have any questions sort of on this slide or anything I can answer?
Yeah, the lease cost subtracts from the total estimated value, correct?
Yeah, so basically what I did, so
That's our
like,
expense.
so we're giving
Yes.
basically Ave
It's
Fuel
our
and World
expense.
Fuel $1 million credit in theirs, because that's what, they're
That's our
basically,
expense,
yeah, exactly. So our recommendation is that we would go with World Fuel again. I mean, again, they were very aggressive with this. They kind of had a leg up to some as the incumbent anyhow, so I was surprised they came in as aggressively as they did, but certainly happy they did. They had the lowest pricing. We've had a great record with them as far as providing a reliable fuel supply. I mean, even coming out of COVID, when we had a lot of issues with truck driver shortages, things like that, they really stepped up to make sure that we got what we needed. So we've never had, knock on wood, we've never had an issue where inventory's been a concern here. So, and I can tell you that's not the same everywhere. There have been airports that have run out of fuel at times and things, and that's obviously a major issue. Obviously, not switching certainly eliminates a lot of cost and staff time. I think Shane and Todd will vouch for the fact that switching suppliers is going to be, would have been a heavy lift. Obviously, one we would do if necessary, but we don't have to. We would probably prefer not to. We've got a great relationship with these folks. Going back to the inventory thing, they actually monitor inventory. I've had them call me up already saying, hey, do you guys have an issue? Do we need to do something here? Or you're a little low today? Those types of things. So that's just the service level we get. We have one sales rep that from them that actually lives right here in Nazareth, and she is here constantly making sure that we're getting what we need. So it's nice to have, she's, talks about the fact she's the hometown girl here, so takes good care of us. And then obviously just on the value side, as you saw on the slide before, when you put everything together, theirs comes out about $800,000 higher over the 5 years. So we'd be looking for, the board to approve a 5-year contract with one option for us to extend it for 5 years at our sole LNAA sole option to extend. So happy to answer questions.
Any additional questions or comments?
Just one quick question. You answered it partially, but have we had any operational issues with World Fuel?
Honestly, nothing at all. I mean, they're a good company. I mean, they really have been standing up to work with.
Well, they're happy to be here with the increase in traffic.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, if you want to just think about it, when we bid this back in 2012, we were pumping about 6 million gallons of fuel. Last year, we pumped 13.5 million. So they've seen a nice growth over the life of them being, and I will say they've contributed to that growth too. They've certainly been a partner with it. So.
Do they continue to have a good reputation from a safety standpoint in their delivery?
I mean, again, I think they're one of, I mean, again, there are really 4 companies across the worldwide that are doing this, and they're all good companies. I wouldn't have had any issue with any of these companies from that standpoint, So that, yeah, but no issues on the safety side with
a 5-year contract. Do we have opportunities to lock fuel each year, or how does that work?
So it's basically, it's an index price. It's an index price plus a margin. So the margin stays the same for them over the years, and then the index fluctuates. And just for everybody's edification, we really only purchase about 200,000 gallons of fuel annually. Everything else we pump is what we call contract fuel, so it's a pass-through straight to the end user. So
we're not taking that risk.
The price is important to us, and it's important because it also protects our customers on their price. So it is certainly an important piece. But
if
at
we
the end
can
of the
protect our customers, I'm sure the airlines, we can attract more airlines.
Yeah, it's a huge piece. And one thing in this contract is basically because the airlines will negotiate directly with World Fuel on their costs, but what World Fuel can't do is charge the airlines any more than what they're charging us. So that sort of gives them a ceiling, and then they'll negotiate.
That's one of the big questions 5 years ago when we did this was, are we taking any risk in terms of fuel prices? And we're not, except at what we have stored in tanks at Braden and at Queen City.
Yeah, everything here, they hold all the inventory here. We don't pay for it till we pump it. So that's the other nice thing. So it's just-in-time inventories as opposed to us having to own 200,000 gallons of jet fuel that we'd have to pay for, which is a huge cash flow goal for us.
Who maintains those tanks?
We do.
Okay.
Is this just for ABE?
No, this is for all 3 airports. Yep.
We do have some fuel value risk, don't we? Where we purchase.
At Queen City and Braden, yeah, but again,
it's not material.
A very small fraction of the overall total.
Yeah, so I remember talking about that a lot.
Yeah.
I don't want to have risk on a big tank.
Exactly. No, it's nice having them hold the inventory, and all 4 did propose that they would do that as well.
Do other airports charge to store their fuel in the form of either an actual fee or a discounted rate?
Yeah, I mean, most airports don't run the FBO as we do. I think if some airports that have a fuel farm, I'm sure they probably charge the FBOs for that storage. We do charge a flowage fee to cover the cost of that. So every gallon pumped through here, there's a 7 cent per gallon flowage fee that goes to the end user,
Okay,
whether that's a contract or retail, and that comes back to us to maintain the fuel farm and fueling vehicles, those types of things.
just curious. Okay.
That's pretty much what it's charged, it's on a flowage fee basis.
Got it.
Any questions, any others? So can I get a motion to approve the award of the aviation fuel contract to World Fuel?
I'll second that.
I'll make a motion.
Give it to Chris. He
Give
was
it to
really,
Chris.
he really wanted that.
All right, any objections? Motion passes. Hearing none, motion passes. I didn't give you a chance to object if you wanted to anyway. So. All right, so we're gonna move along to the award of the bid for Braden Air Park runway edge lighting, and that would be Ryan.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So we've talked about this project when we've done some capital updates in the past. So we're looking to award a bid for the runway 1836 edge lighting project at Braden Air Park. Brief overview, which again, we've talked about at committees. The project is new runway taxiway edge lighting, new conduits, wiring, and then it also includes a PAPI system, which is a precision approach path indicator, which helps the pilots on approach to be on the correct path when landing at Braden Air Park. We did receive 2 bids May 8th for this project. Bronder Technical Services from Prospect, PA, submitted the lowest responsive bid. We broke it out into 2 packages. Base bid was for the runway, and then the ad alternate was for the taxiway piece. Both of those came in at $827,836. That bid was about 15% below the engineer's estimate, which again is in line with what we want. The biggest thing, and again, this is kind of relative to what we're probably going to talk about later with the RCO, they did submit all of the 35 or so pages of required documents that they have to sign off and confirm and certify, as well as our contractor qualification questionnaire, which includes things about, license to do business. Have they done work on airfield electrical before? Have they installed PAPI systems, which are very meticulous, with what the FAA requires and even what PennDOT requires? And they actually did mention, again, as one of our questions, they do have a Class A apprenticeship program. So just, again, as part of that conversation. Biggest thing, projects funded by the PennDOT Bureau of Aviation. So as a quick reminder, Braden does not get federal funds, but it gets state grants. We're responsible for 25% of that cost. So the 827 costs us 206,959, which is what we have in our cash flow and budget. So just a couple items upon approval of Bronder Technical Services. If it gets approved, we submit everything to PennDOT to get the grant paperwork moving. We have the grant basically earmarked, but we can't actually submit until we actually have bids in hand. We can't use the engineer's estimates. So we'll do that later this month, next month, and then the grant paperwork basically gets finalized before construction starts, anticipated in August at this point. Again, I kind of mentioned Bronder Technical Services, FAA approved contractor. They do a lot of airport lighting. They actually did do our AWAS system at Queen City some years ago. But again, we're just looking for approval to award the bid to Bronder Technical Services, Prospect, PA, in the amount of $827,836. Happy to answer any questions.
Who's the other bid?
The other bid was Mohawk Contracting that is out here doing the HU.
I'll make a motion for them.
Can we get a second?
I'm gonna give it a second.
I'll second it.
All right, so that was Chris again?
That was Chris. Give it to him. He's in.
All right, let's do Chris for a second. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Are there any nays or abstentions? All right, hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Going right to the capital projects update.
So again, go through the updates we typically do. Airfield status of where we are. Obviously, the rain outside is great for grass growing and staying cold, but it's also for airfield construction. We'll get into a little bit, but Taxiway Alpha, which is on the left there in green, is currently closed. That's really impacted the schedule with the weather we're experiencing. And then kind of in the X in the middle, we've been working on some of the runway packages. Package 5 for the runway, again, we're continuing in those work areas. Biggest thing, we've talked about this in the past at the committee, is coordinating with runway 624 closed. All the other carriers, primarily cargo at night, cannot use 1331 when the runway is wet. So every night, or basically every afternoon, we're making a call with our operations group, construction group, and the contractors to basically go or not go. And that was actually talked about with the carriers because, again, they can't land here. That's obviously a big issue when the primary runway is closed. So again, that impacts obviously the project schedule if they can't work, but we're continuing to work through that. Again, hopefully we have a long off summer, but that's kind of what we're working through. Just again as an update. Package 6 is really going to be after package 5, so nothing really on this until August. Taxiway Alpha, as I mentioned, so this portion in here is closed. So again, which is why the weather is obviously a big impact, working with air traffic control to basically back taxi on the runway. But again, they're making progress when they can. About mid-June at this point, we're looking to reopen that portion of pavement. But again, it's complete rehabilitation, it's new lighting along that section, and then we'll do phases as we go throughout the year as well. Northside Logistics and Cargo, the biggest thing here is Taxiway Delta, which is the air side, and the cargo apron is out on the street for bid, looking to get bids due June 5th. Again, so working through that at a pre-bid meeting, and nothing new on the FHWA grant, but we're still having conversations with those folks. Parking structure, Colin talked a little bit about it. You know, from the side of the looking for the financing. Later in June, we're looking to have an internal 30% review meeting, and that's really the first step to really try and hone in, you know, some of the budget elements, the components that we need and want in the garage, and really working through what we need to do to keep it moving. And obviously the cost is a big piece with the capacity component. Government building demo, again, from last month, probably looks different when you look over there. The bulk demolition is really complete. We wanted to get that done this past week, given all the rain that we're getting, because again, our switchgear is in the basement, which we need to protect. Really, in the next month, you'll see they'll be doing some of the footings for the support that really needs to stay in place because of that basement and switchgear. And then again, that whole section, which on the left is that south wing, basically gets a new deck and roof to protect that structure. So again, just some photos you can see. So as I mentioned, this is basically where our switchgear is on the other side, underground. So that's why they have to be meticulous about how they're taking the building down. But you can basically see as of yesterday, so here's that whole south wing. And actually those walls are gone as of this morning. Air handler 4, again, we've talked about phase 2A, which is really the hallway out here, the back portion, end of May is looking to be complete. Actually, today, yep, today they're actually working on the startup of the AHU4, so coordinating with the manufacturer and the mechanical contractor. And then basically beginning of June, final completion, working through punch list as well. So as you probably noticed, Allegiant is back on the west side of the terminal in their original ticket area. We're just kind of working in the back as part of that. So that's been moving very well, which we always appreciate. And again, here's some photos. Lighting was drastically improved from what was there before. Again, new ceiling grid, and then actually raising the ceiling to make it, you know, more open for folks that are in there. And then there's the back hallway that they've been working again with HVAC and putting in the ceiling grid.
Ryan, did that project, it's on time?
Correct. Yep.
Any over budget, any item?
No, this actually has been very smooth with the contractors we got.
There's a lot of coordination there, obviously. Good.
That's good. Moving on, Queen City. Again, we just received this past week closeout documents for this project. Again, working through them, and the reason we hold it on here is again to get the remaining grant funding. So hopefully in the next month or two that'll come off. But that's been working very well for us down there. We talked about this last month too, in terms of shifting taxiway alpha at Queen City. The environmental CADEX document has been completed, so really we're gonna work on closing out this grant and get proposals for the design portion to get grant funding, hopefully for that next year. And then obviously that's including then in the future, shifting that taxiway in phases as the federal government can give us money based on what our capital program is. And moving on to Brayton Air Park, again, we just talked about this, but you know, there's kind of a schematic of the lightings and layouts. So again, as everything goes forward, we'll continue with the notice of awards, administrative notice to proceed, and everything else to make sure all the submittals are in place. So we'll be kind of working on that next. Again, where we stand, nothing really changed from before other than the percentages. And you can see again, some of the ones on top and the bottom are getting ready to be closed out. So then updated. The last one here with the Brayton lighting we just talked about, that's the design. So that'll be updated with the construction piece. And obviously that percentage will change. But just that phase of the project, the design is obviously complete. So just as a FYI there. I believe that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
We talked about this at last month's meeting, with all of the goings on and being polite in terms of what's going on down in Washington. As of last month, everything was okay in terms of our federal funding. Has anything shifted in that regard? Are you hearing anything, or are we still insulated to a certain extent from that?
Yeah, at this point, all of the infrastructure, transportation-related projects, there's still moving forward with funding for those. So, but to your point, we're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, have to.
And are those a reimbursement or
Yes.
reimbursement?
Yes.
Which increases the risk.
Yep. Yeah, but I think we maybe talked about it the other month as well, is the design components are reimbursement, but we won't start construction until we actually get the grant in hand.
Right.
For
And
those projects.
It's still a reimbursement.
Right.
But you actually sign a grant agreement, government. So there's a little bit of reassurance when you have a grant agreement.
No comment, Tom.
A little bit of reassurance. I think I qualified that.
I saw the one project, the federal was like 156,000.
Mhm.
If we don't get reimbursed, I'm sure Todd can find
Figure
it
it
somewhere.
Have you met Todd?
I have total confidence in Todd.
It's okay, Paul, we got the RACP money coming any day now.
By November.
Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you,
Great,
Ryan.
thank you.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the RCO discussion. I'm assuming that anyone who doesn't want to stay, who isn't on the business committee, does not have to stay? Seeing no one moving? All right. I don't know who's leading this discussion. Liz?
Katie Fina's on the line. I have to step out in about 15 minutes, but she'll be able to stay for the duration of the discussion.
I don't know who starts this, because this is like, you know, putting something together that many of you had comments on how you wanted to see it go, but I don't know where we go from here. I assume everyone got Tom's emails yesterday with his
Sorry,
and
that ended up
Ryan's.
being 2 emails.
2 emails, okay.
Don, I know it didn't go out yet, but I sent a copy of Northampton County's RCO to Liv.
Yeah, that was included
Was it?
previously as well.
So I mean, I've heard the county executive speak today. It's court tested. My opinion is that's the one we should be going with. Want to change the threshold? I mean, I'm okay with that, but.
I'll put out just a couple of comments. One, Jim, I agree, and I agree with Lamont and his legal. I think we are all in agreement in that regard. I disagree, and I've known Lamont for a lot of years, and I consider him a friend, but I disagree with him in terms of the cost aspect, in terms of the underlying contracts. Because it's under budget doesn't mean it wasn't higher cost. It just means it could have been budgeted to absorb higher costs associated with contractors that meet requirements under an RCO. So I don't make the leap because it's under budget, it was lower cost. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. The other part is, and I think we all agree, and we can set this issue aside. I think we all agree that we need more tradespeople. We need more carpenters. We need more electricians. We need more welders. We need more everything in terms of the trades. In my opinion, the question comes down to with that component of an RCO that requires the apprenticeship program, in my opinion, that increases costs. And that puts the cost of the apprenticeship program on the airport authority and other entities that operate under an RCO. The question in my mind is, should that be our cost to absorb? Or should that be borne if the federal government requiring RCOs and things of that nature, that cost should be borne there, not on the airport authority. So that's where I am. And then the other part, and I think we all agree and we can deal with this, is we've got a lot of specialized contractors that do work. You know, for example, for the crush creek we install at the end of the runways, there's one. I don't know whether they're union or not, and we have no choice there. And we haven't,
And there's
because they're
waivers
the
for
only
that
ones that
stuff.
the
It
FAA.
also doesn't matter whether they're union or not.
No, it doesn't, because the FAA says you gotta use them. So we
Right,
have
but it's
no
not a
choice.
union, non-union issue. I don't wanna make it that, so.
I think that's part of it. It may not be all of it, but I think to say that that's not a component of it.
Yeah, I mean, all units meet that qualification.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what it is. I asked this question last time about subcontractors. Would they be subject to the RCO as well? And I think the answer was yes.
Yeah, that's how you write it. I mean, if you want that to be the case, then yes, it's the case. And if you don't want it to be the case, then it doesn't have to be. But all the ones that we've seen as sort of models for this do have it applied to the subs.
Are they subject to the threshold? Say a subcontractor has a $50,000 subcontract with a prime GC. Are they subject to the RCO because they, even though their contract's under whatever limit it is, say $500,000, they're still subject to it because it's under the GC's prime contract?
Again, it depends on how you want it to be worded. So if you want to have exceptions for, okay, well, this subcontractor really doesn't meet the threshold, therefore we're going to relax this standard as to, you know, certain parameters, then that's something
Yeah, but
that
if
you're
it's
able
on
to
the
do.
bid and the subcontractors are in, it's under that bid. Subcontractor doesn't get a pass because
Right, and you can look at it that way as well. Like if the contract amount means that this is triggered, then everyone working on the project has to comply with it also.
All right. Yeah, see, that's my problem with this is painters. If there's a painter that has 10 people working for them, that's probably a decent sized painting outfit for the area. They don't have an apprentice program. Or the flooring contractor, they're installing flooring, they don't have an apprentice program. So you really are eliminating the pool. When the pool gets smaller and competition gets smaller, prices go up. It's just human nature. So that's my sticking point with
Just
that.
to interject a piece of information. So we sent a lot of information, but one of those pieces gets back to the disadvantaged business enterprise piece. And so in terms of a lot of the contracts that we have, we're required to have participation by DVE firms. A lot of times they don't have those types of programs, and that's in part why they have that classification. So just in terms of those goals, we do have a goal to have some level of participation in projects that are grant funded. We've traditionally applied that to all of our projects, but again, that's all part of the decision process here.
So how do we
would they fall under the threshold though?
I was gonna ask, what percentage, Tom, you said, we try to get something in, what percentage do you usually?
Ranges by project. We actually have to submit a plan on a triennial basis. Every 3 years, we have to submit a plan to FAA that gets approved. Right now, our ranges on projects go from 9% up to 15% DVE participation, just project by project. So they have to show that good faith effort because they went out, solicited for DVE firms to essentially be subs in most cases underneath the primes.
Does the threshold apply to subs as well as GCs? I would assume, right?
It should. Most of them are written that way. For the simple reason that,
I mean, if
just
you
say it's $1 million contract, you bid it out at $1 million and you try to sub it out at $40,000 a piece, right? You know what I mean? Everything falls under that one lane, that contract, right? If you're subbing out below that contract, those contractors you're subbing have to meet whatever requirements are in place.
So how do we determine if a waiver should be applicable to a contractor based on a threshold? You know, at what point do we say, you know, this is a smaller contractor, a waiver should be applied to that contractor, and does that then put us in a legal bind if a larger contractor, you know, wants to contest that that same waiver didn't apply to them?
Normally the waiver comes out when you can't get the bid.
Or for example, for the betting system that we keep going back to here, where there's, you know, 2 in the country that do it. Okay, obviously there's gonna have to be a waiver for that, right? There's 2 contractors, the FAA tells you, here's who's doing your job for you. Talk about raising cost. Okay, here's who's doing your job for you. You can only have 2 bids, period. That's raising cost, right? That's blocking people out.
The thing we don't know is.
That's where the waivers would normally come into play. Or, you know, Lehigh County put a waiver in one time. Things were crazy. I don't care if you had an RCO, PLAs, or you didn't have any requirements at all. People weren't bidding. You weren't getting 3 bids on any jobs, private or public, a few years ago in the Lehigh Valley. It just wasn't happening. And there was a waiver put in place on a Lehigh County job one time. I'd have to go back and look. I forget what job it was. In order to
It was
get
for a trail.
You know what I mean? No, that was a different one. That was because not the FAA, but somebody again said, you know, that it was part of the grant process that said that they only had, you know, these contractors had to be used for that. I actually worked with the county administration on that one, helping them work through that so they could get the trail done, you know, and you know, keep our trails and parks nice in the county. But usually it's done in those kind of situations, you know.
I think what Jim said a couple of seconds ago is typically the way that it works is you go after the bid. If you don't get a responsible bid that qualifies, then you can apply the waiver criteria. Is that the way it works, Jim? Yeah.
You're not getting
There is a waiver for Northampton County's ordinance, so just be mindful of that you're gonna have to take it from somewhere else or write your own.
And you'd be surprised when you start putting these in, other contractors pop up because they feel it's more of a level playing field. The one person this board had a problem with, I had contractors that saw that JGC. I'm not wasting my time. They put ridiculous bids in, so you have some of that. Kevin's been in the business for a very long time. He doesn't realize there's a soft flooring guy right in Allentown that has an apprentice program. So these things pop up.
Yeah,
Metro has an apprentice program. You know,
that
so
is
they
true.
fit.
That is true where if you create, you know, there's ABC contractors, and if whatever, you know, because it's open process, public brings all of them out. I get the goal is to try to eliminate those C players. Oftentimes those C players are low cost providers. So it's a balancing act. It is. It really is. I think there has to be a threshold for subcontractors. Because again, it's.
What would that threshold be?
I think it's up for discussion, but.
Yeah, Lamont said, you know, 250 and dropped to 100. I think for the airport authority, that's far too low. I think like you look at the projects that we're doing, this parking garage, I mean, we should be considering 750 to $1 million. You know, I just.
So should it be dependent on the project?
It depends how much administrative compliance and minutia we want to put our staff through and what they are willing to go through, right? Like I said this before, we're here to advise them. So, you know, we'd like everybody's input in this discussion, but it just comes down to how, you know, big and clumsy do we want to get? I think we should try to find a way to draft this where we stay lean. You know, it's built in a way where it, you know, creates compliance and we get good bids. But I do think the threshold's, you know, a key to all of this.
I actually agree with that. Not word for word, like a lot of times I agree with Jonathan.
You can use everything.
but I do believe 100,000 is too low for the airport. I fully believe that. I don't know what it is. I will actually make a comment here that I appreciate the administration here getting this information out to us. I think it came way too late, knowing that the meeting was happening today. I had a chance to look at it a little bit. I'm assuming everybody in this room didn't have a chance to fully dive into it and digest everything that's in here yet. I would actually also request from the administration here that it shows in here that over the last 8 years, 20 major projects has been, completed, kind of gives a thing. I would like to see a breakdown of those projects with what it cost, right? Like what the cost was.
We did provide an attachment.
Was there another attachment? Okay, like I said, I did not get through everything yet. I tried. You have it printed, awesome. Dawn, I appreciate you. That's why when you started, you were my right hand. Remember that when you first came on the committee?
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, I do agree there needs to be a threshold. I am a full proponent of the apprenticeship. I'm willing to, I guess, where my bending is willing to go in this is with the waiver language that I think we need to tighten up. It needs to be different than Northampton counties. It needs to be different than Lehigh counties. It needs to fit under what we work with here at the airport and some of the extra things that we have to deal with, like the FAA. So I'm not sure 100%. I'd have to dive into that to really see what a threshold would be. But I think if we set a proper threshold.
Are you, just to stop there, are you good with a threshold for subcontractors?
I think it's definitely up for discussion.
Yeah, let's just think about a subcontractor that has a $200,000 contract.
Are you talking about a prime contract?
No, a sub of a prime.
A sub of a prime?
Yeah.
And that contractor who's bidding that project is saying every subcontractor falls under that RCO. That's what they're saying.
I would say above a threshold, it would. Because here's the thing.
In my mind, that threshold is gonna be very low.
Yeah, but think about the risk of a $100,000 subcontract. We're trying to eliminate risk. I mean, there's really no risk with a $100,000 contract. What can go wrong? They didn't touch up their paint. I mean, that's like easy to go back or the risk is low, right? We're trying to eliminate risk. I think the risk is low with that. So if you said $250,000 for a subcontract, for a subcontract threshold, I'd be then agreeable too.
So I think what's up for discussion definitely and where we need to work from is, I mean, I heard it say today, we're already asking if they have an apprenticeship program, right? So that's something we're already asking for here, so why not require it? Obviously, throughout the years, as the airport changed their procurement codes here, they thought that was something that was very valuable, right? Because I'm guessing, Ryan, can I ask you, before it got changed, I know in here, I did read that you guys have been working with the law firm and moving things. I remember you and I spoke a couple years ago. Yep. I'm guessing that apprenticeship question was not in there previous to the changes.
Yeah, that question and probably 20 others weren't in there either. So it's constantly evolving to make it so we're getting who we want.
Right. So instead of just asking the question, let's require it. It's already something that's been talked about here. I think the thresholds and the subcontractor thresholds are definitely, we can talk about that in detail. And make sure we get the right numbers and the waivers. I think those are the three main things that we need to make sure that we have bullet point or bulletproof here when we get this done to make it work as a benefit for the airport's procurement. That's my feelings.
I just want to read Christopher's message online. He said, can staff work with council to come up with a draft pilot RCO, then come back to committee?
I think this committee should work with the law firm.
So this is Katie, if I can sort of just jump in, because I agree with Christopher, and based upon what was just said, the information you received yesterday, with the understanding that those, the 3 points that were just pointed out, my recommendation is let Elizabeth and I meet with Tom and Ryan, draft an RCO, maybe draft some waiver language, an apprenticeship language for everyone to consider. Maybe we can give you options on how it's worded. Let everyone digest what they received yesterday and think about appropriate thresholds. And let us come back to you next month with some language to consider and maybe some options.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
That'd be ideal, so then we have a red line we can start working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
we all know what the critical points are. I think we just need to start massaging the language to get it where we need it.
Just, Tom, was there any, and Colin too, when you were meeting with legislators, was there any comment on RCO? Were they supportive of it? Did they discuss it at all? Because I know one of the names up there publicly spoke against RCOs in the
I
past.
know the House passed it. RCO passed through the House.
Yeah.
So.
It's come up.
Yeah, it has come up in discussion.
Would that impact funding? Do they hold funding hostage?
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Because
great
I-
question.
it's-
Question.
Depends on the member.
Again, one name up there in particular has said they would hold funding if RCOs are passed.
Yeah, but he's a pilot and he loves aviation.
Yeah, but also if you have
That's
DEI in your requirements, you might not get funded either.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah,
That's a bigger word
I'm
than
just
RCO.
wondering if it came up since there were some recent meetings.
It has come up. It has come up in discussion.
My other ask, Tom, my other ask, so we can actually discuss like a proper threshold, and I think that's very, very important here. Is not just the 20 main projects that has happened.
Yeah.
Can we get a snapshot of some of the smaller projects, right? Because everything, now that I know that you sent this and I got to quick look at it, everything on here, is 100,000 or more. How many projects fall lower than that? Because I think that'll be a big key for the subcontractor. But that would be a big key for the subcontractor portion, right? Like if there's 200 projects that fell at $25,000, well, we're gonna have a different discussion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, than other things. So I think that's the next big key.
And to your point, Justin, exactly, how are those projects performing? So we'll give you a sense of, even on the smaller scale, how those projects performed.
I appreciate that, thank you.
So two things, we talked a lot about subcontracting, and like Justin said, we didn't get this paperwork till late yesterday afternoon. So I did read a lot of what the staff said, I caught a lot of that, and I thought there was some good stuff. One thing I didn't get to read is they, with the solicitor, made some changes in the past. I would really like to see what those, that we don't need to overlap a lot of the things they have covered. I believe some of the things are covered. So I think we need a little more time to really digest all this that we got yesterday. But with subcontractors in construction, that's where the cheating happens. I'll give you an example of a mall right up the street. They hired a GC who hired a sub. That subcontractor, interior subcontractor, I go there, all the guys got the subcontractor's name. It's a very big subcontractor in the valley. They all have their shirts on. I start talking to them through an interpreter. I go up and tell the mall manager, you got guys down there working without workman's comp. He says, absolutely not, Kevin, you're dead wrong. I said, I am not dead wrong. There was 6 guys down there working without workman's comp. He says, how can that be? Right here, he goes in his office, he shows me the certification of workman's comp by that subcontractor. I said, that's fine. Now get somebody in your facility that speaks Spanish and go down there and get those guys' names, if they'll give them to you. He goes down and gets the names, then he calls the contractor. I want to see your workman's comp and show me these guys. They weren't his, they were subs. They were all 1099. By the time the mall manager got back down there, they were picking up their tools, they wouldn't talk, they were leaving. And this is one of the big, so you gotta watch, and I'm hoping in the language they already have that you must require a list of everybody working. If the subs are subbing the work out, you need a list. If they're subbing it out to 1099, you need a list that's what they're gonna do. Because that's where so much of the cheating, and that's where you get offset in wages. Because the difference between paying one guy, but if you're not paying workman's comp, if you're not paying taxes, if you're putting it all on that guy who's going wherever he's going with his money, he's not doing, then you get a big discrepancy in bids. And so if a good contractor sees a certain bid that uses that practice, and it's a practice, they steer clear of that because bidding costs money. So please, let's make sure that, I agree, we gotta look at subs, but let's make sure we don't leave a wide open gap for people to cheat the system.
Agreed.
The other thing, apprenticeship, Mr. Rapper, I really don't know him, I knew his dad, had a rocky relationship. the way he described his apprenticeship, that would meet most RCOs. You don't need that 40-year-old guy that he was referring to can't work on a job. No, that is not what an RCO requires. It requires that most of them require that you have graduated somebody in the last 5 years from a certified apprentice program. Doesn't mean your whole company has to be apprenticeship. You won't find a company out there. You won't, don't get a market. All their employees are not went through. The large majority have, but not everyone. So remember, this doesn't require that. It requires that contractor invest a little bit into his employees. And when we talk about eliminating people, we have to be very careful about that. But honestly, to say what you are trying to eliminate people with an RCO. You're trying to eliminate people that don't invest into the community, invest in their workers, invest in their safety. I would also recommend you, and they may, like I said, I didn't get to read what they already require. You know, having everybody required OSHA 10 is no cost to the contractor. Now, union contractors, they have it in apprentice school, they teach it in class, they go into depth. But if you as a non-union or any contractor, I should stay away from non-union, you as a contractor don't want to pay, you can actually send your guy home, tell him to go online, Department of Labor, do the paperwork at home. You know, maybe I'll reimburse, I think it's a couple bucks.
Clicksafety.org.
Yeah, you know, so, I mean, it's not that difficult to even do these things, and there's a way they can even cheat on it, but at least we're making an effort to require them to do some kind of safety training. I think that would be very important for its airport. So hopefully, you know, that's, if not already in there, and I apologize if it is, I didn't get to read what they worked on in the past, but just a couple of my thoughts.
My last comment, and it's literally my last comment, but off of what Kevin just said, the very beginning of what he just said is kind of what I was saying back here to Ryan, right? The things we already have, right, that are already working, the questions we're already asking, we got to put teeth to that, right? It's great to say, hey, do you have this? Hey, do you have that? Hey, do you have this? But where's the teeth to make sure they have it? Because anybody can fill out the paper, right? It's like when they.
Can you put teeth into a standard contract if it's not there? Do you need an RCO to do that?
You can call it whatever you want, but you have to have, I mean, you don't have to call it an RCO, right? That's just,
Have an enforcement provision.
that's just the beautiful fancy name that's out there. Okay, you can call it whatever you want in your procurement codes, but you have to have, if you don't have this, you don't qualify for this bid then, right? If you don't have this, and that's the teeth.
What do you call it, John? Enforcement?
No, enforcement provisions as well, so that it can't change during the term of the contract.
Right.
So we want to be careful of as well. I can tell you, and I'll make this my last comment as well. Couple of things to say. I think everybody at the table agrees in regard to safety provisions and things of that nature. No one wants to cut corners there. The cost associated with enforcement of things like that far outweighs the benefit. I gotta make sure I say this. So the benefit's better than the cost. Gotta make sure I say that correctly. And it is interesting. One of the reasons why, and I want to go back, Justin, to what I said a couple of minutes ago, because I didn't finish the comment. There was a second half to it. One of the reasons why we instituted fiduciary responsibility training at the board here is because we all have conflicts. Everybody at this table's got conflicts. I do believe you guys have a partial conflict in terms of this issue in regard to the union, non-union aspect of responsible contract ordinances. I've got a conflict because I've got a number of clients that are subcontractors that don't have apprenticeship programs that have done work here that won't qualify. So I've got a conflict in terms of when I take off my board hat and I put on my bank hat, I would want to do everything I can to support my customers because I'm too small a bank to bank crimes. That's just the reality of it. So I end up with the subs. I try to keep that set aside and keep focus on the airport, as I know you do as well. But I wanted to make the point that we all have conflicts, and I'm not exempt from that. That's something that we all, a fun part of sitting here is we all get to deal with that.
I think that's one of my biggest points too, because like Kevin has a big conflict, right, in the business that he's in with this specific topic. And it's just, we all need to remember, like, whatever we implement, we need to make sure that it's an ordinance that is supporting Tom's effort and his team's effort, not hindering it, because we're here to help advise the administration. So just keeping that into perspective. And
I think that's a very important, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that we are advisory and that we certainly don't want to make the process more clunky. Two things you said.
We're trying to fix something, not break it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And it
So we
sounds
have to
like,
make sure we do that.
it sounds like the recommendation is that our attorneys will go back and bring back to us an RCO that they believe is fair and that we would all be okay with waivers that they will show us and thresholds that will be comfortable for this board. I ask that you bring it back to us in enough time to be able to review it prior to our next business committee meeting so that we can come in with solid recommendations. We like this, we don't like this, and aren't trying to cram it all in the night before.
And Dawn,
the
what would you
meeting.
say is like appropriate, a week?
Understood.
At least a week before,
Yeah,
if not prior.
Yeah,
but a
Katie, can you
week
get that to us a week before the next committee meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd just like to say one thing. So there's a lot of talk about the apprenticeship, but places that have RCOs, the apprenticeship isn't what is getting people kicked out off bids. It's OSHA violations. It's not paying their employees, having prevailing wage theft. That's what's getting these people kicked off.
Act 72.
But a bad contractor can't come into a boardroom or a county council meeting or anywhere and say, hey, we don't want the RCO because we can't qualify because we have all these prevailing wage thefts through LNAA. So they attack the apprenticeship, which most of them qualify for. The other thing I'll say, I wasn't at the last meeting, but Justin read a letter. So this board is comprised from Lehigh County, Northampton County. Lehigh County Executive supports it. Justin read the letter. Northampton County Executive, he was here today, he supports it. I just think we need to take that into consideration as we're appointed by these people. That's all I'll say.
And Jim, just 1 second, if you could hang on for 1 second. Everything you said in terms of OSHA violations and things of that nature and an RCO, I had not only no problem with, I encourage and support.
Yeah, it should
Absolutely,
be.
no problem whatsoever.
That would
I just
make
get-
them responsible.
I agree. We absolutely agree. So if we had an RCO without an apprenticeship program that covered all of that, I'm on board.
So what
But
was,
I think the apprenticeship program is a sticking point for me.
just to break it down, I'm gonna be a wise guy. So what we're saying is training is gonna cost us money. This is probably the first time I've ever sat in a meeting and heard that a trained workforce is gonna end up costing you money. I was gonna challenge Kevin on that, because if at all possible, and I can't do it now, because he will go with a company that has an apprenticeship.
Sure will.
What he does is, at the end of the day, he has to make the number he bid works. So he will prefer that trained workforce any day of the week. And let's be clear, it may look up front like it costs you money, but anytime, if I hire a person to work by my financial money, I want a good trained person, because maybe I pay him a little more upfront, but my return is better. It's the same thing. It is across the board. Everybody, whenever you go out and try to do business, you try to get the most trained, qualified person, because in the long run, it doesn't cost you money, it benefits you.
That's the whole reason why CareerLink exists.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually trying to argue against something we all believe in, training.
No, we're not arguing against it, we're arguing over who should pay for it. I would pay to train our employees from here to Kingdom Come. Under an apprenticeship program, I'm paying to train someone else's employees. And that's where I have,
Well, you're paying
that's
to
where I
train
have
the
my-
employees.
Here's
that
the
are doing
difference,
it.
John, where you would like to see it done is in our VOTEX, in our private, so in our public schools, so all the taxpayers pay for it. Where we like to see apprenticeships be private, because then the industry that uses that trained personnel is actually paying in a very long about way for that service.
I
That's my
understand that.
argument.
I understand that.
So Katie, your mission, should you decide to accept it, is to integrate all of this into something that we can take a look at prior to the next meeting.
Working with Tom and.
Yes.
I accept that mission, and we'll get you this no later than 1 week before the committee, before if we can.
Thank you. All right. Is there any new business? Please say no. Hearing none, I don't think there's any need for an executive session. We just need a motion to adjourn.
And you want to give me your